Slowhands Rock Talk Show.
In a band looking to rehearse or get some high quality recording done, look no further. Paul's Hall Studios is located in Cumbernauld, Scotland. They offer a top-end recording studio, 5 rehearsal rooms and over 2 decades of experience. Click the link in the description for more info. Before the video starts, if you could do me a huge favour and make sure that you have subscribed to the channel. It's free, it only takes seconds to do, and it really does help the channel continue to grow. Now on to the video. But guys, thank you so much for making a bit of time out of your your evening, to come on to the podcast and to speak to myself about all things music. As I just said there, we will talk about music for each of you. We'll talk about the band and everything else that fits in between. As I said, no technical difficulties whatsoever. It's smooth sailing so far. We're all good. But what I like to do with the guests is I go back to the very beginning. So for each of you, where were you originally brought up? We'll start with Les, since that's just the order that I've got it on the screen.
Okay, well, this should be quite easy then, Ian, because Ray, John and myself first met as schoolboys. Ray and I actually have known each other since the age of 8, which was almost 20 years ago now.
I was going to say that just a few years ago.
Just after the war.
Which one?
The Boer War, I think it was. So we met at primary school, and when we went to high school, John joined that school after having moved into the area. We're all from originally from Johnston, Renfrewshire.
Right, okay.
So just outside of Glasgow, for anybody that doesn't know the geography of it.
Yep.
And having been introduced to each other through school, it would be fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, we were probably not the cool kids in class. So the only way that we could get any kind of credibility for ourselves was to find something unique that we could do that was a bit different to what anybody else could do. And we decided that the best way to do that was to form a band. And Ray and I first had the conversation about forming a band in his house. And I think one of us said we should form a band. And neither of us knew how to play any musical instruments or had written any songs. But we thought it was kind of cool, and we thought we would increase our own coolness factor significantly if we were to do that. And to be fair, when we asked John as well, he was fairly quickly on board with the idea too. So that was how we first started.
That's funny that you say that, because my daughter's 20 now, but a few years ago she was in her last year of high school, so she was about maybe 17. I can't remember why, but I asked her one day, because similar to yourselves, I started playing in bands when I was at high school, the exact same setup as yourselves, and it was the coolest thing ever. Now, see the amount of bands I knew that it's almost like they weren't really a band. It was just a bunch of wannabe musicians hanging about, but you said you were a band, and it was the coolest thing, and you had great fun. I said to my daughter, I says, do any of your friends play musical instruments? And she's like, yeah, there's like a guitarist or a drummer or a couple of them here and there. And I said, are any of them in bands? And she looked at me like I insulted her. She's like, that's the most embarrassing thing you've ever said. Now, times must have changed, because regardless of, for generations, being in a band was the coolest thing ever. So for someone young to think that that's uncool now. But then I think maybe that's just my daft daughter just being silly, because there's still plenty of cool bands and young people out there starting out and that. But see, for each of you, so you've met, well, Les and Ray primary school, John high school. For each of you, were you exposed to music from a young age? And if so, where did it come from? Is it parents, siblings? And what type of bands were you exposed to from a young age?
I was a piano player. My parents had visions of me being a concert pianist or something of that sort.
And they sent me to piano lessons at the age of 5. And they were relentless, I have to tell you, the number of instruments they thought I ought to learn to play. I've had a trumpet, I've had a clarinet, I've had an oboe, I've had virtually everything except a triangular bass drum. But they were absolutely determined I was going to be brilliant at this stuff. And to be honest with you, I absolutely don't regret a minute of playing the piano, because I've been playing it since the age of 5, which is a long time now. Their taste in music was slightly odd. My dad was in dance bands as a young man. He played the pipes and the accordion, and that was his thing. My mother sang, that was her bit. And it was fairly early on, largely due to the efforts of young Raimondo there, that I got into Queen, when he turned up with Queen 2. And the pair of us used to sing Ogre Battle at the back of the English classroom, for which I believe one of us got belted, and I think it wasn't Ray. And from there on, the music, I got into kind of prog rock. Genesis is one of my first loves and always has been. Yeah. But I have to say, I've tremendously fond memories with thinking back to the earliest days when we started the band and we had a drummer with a cardboard box, and Ray knew A7, and I was playing in D flat, and we sang Sloop John B, and that was our only song. I would do it again any day.
What about yourself, Les? What music were you exposed to from a young age?
From a young age, my dad was a good singer, and he was always the guy who would sing at a party, and his party piece was Al Jolson, a bit of Frank Sinatra, a bit of Dean Martin, and he really was an entertainer. He could hold a room, and that I thought was a terrifically cool thing to be able to do. And a bit like John, the music that I was exposed to at home was of that era. You know, Perry Como was a young whippersnapper, I think, coming onto the scene as far as my parents were concerned. But my folks were very encouraging about music and were quite happy for me to listen to all kinds of stuff. And as John said, Queen was an early one that bound the three of us and the other guys that were involved in the band together. But I've always been an admirer of a wide variety of music, like classical music, like John talks about, Stevie Wonder, the Beach Boys, Wishbone Ash, all the way... Thin Lizzy, all the way up to the punk era when I enjoyed the sensational Alex Harvey band, which John is a big fan of too. Sex Pistols, the Stranglers, all of that stuff was stuff that really helped me to work out that there was no such thing as good and bad music. It's just about what you particularly tap into at that age and stage of life. Yeah,
I mean, obviously I was... My mum and dad both like music. They don't play any instruments, but they like music. But especially my dad, he would have been a teenager, late 60s. So the amount of the bands that he was just listening to, because that was the bands at the time, they're all classic bands now when you look back. The Who, the Doors, Creedence Clearwater, the Rolling Stones, the list goes on, David Bowie, and they're all amazing artists. But even when you fast forward, I had somebody on the podcast and they'd said that they like old school pop music, but what they were saying was pop music from the 80s, for example, he says, is very different from pop music nowadays. Pop music in the 80s was still legitimate artists and legitimate bands creating pop music, whereas nowadays I think you just think it's very commercialised and it's more about how you look and all that. But, there's something magical. I mean, I was brought up as the 80s and the 90s. You were still getting different kinds of music being created that was coming out, and bands that today they're almost classic bands nowadays. I kind of feel like it got to a point, and I don't know if it's my age, but I feel like it got to a point maybe from about 2000s onwards where I feel like there's a lot of good music still being created, but I don't know if there's anything new being created. Everything to me now feels like it sounds similar to something that's already been in the past.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is the case. I don't feel like there's been any big musical movements since probably the 90s, when you think about it. I mean, whether you like it or not, Britpop was a very, very big thing back in the 90s, and I can't think of a big movement. You know, there was 2 or 3 years in the 90s where it was like a movement, which I would imagine was maybe similar to the late 60s when you had all those bands coming out, the same sort of thing. But obviously, you know each other from school. You go to high school. High school is where it seems to be that a lot of people discover their own musical taste. You've mentioned bands, Queen and all that you started to discover for yourself. For each of you, do you remember what was the very first album or the very first single that you ever bought?
Go with you. Want to go first, Ray?
It doesn't fit with my musical genre taste at all. The first single I bought when I was very young, and I think it was "I Like to Teach the World to Sing."
Classic.
But the first single I really wanted more than anything was Bohemian Rhapsody, and I remember walking the 1.5 miles, 2 miles, so I didn't have to spend any money in a bus fare to get to Woolworths and Johnson. So I had my 50 pence pocket money to buy the single on the day it came out, and I got it.
That's a pretty good start. What about yourself, John? What was your first album or single?
Oh, geez, that's a tricky question. My first single that I bought was January by Pilot.
Right.
I bought that. I can't remember when that came out, but I bought that. It was 45 pence. I must have got a discount, Ray. I got a bag of chips with a 5 pence change. But January was the first one. In terms of albums, there were a number of albums kicking about, and I remember that I got gifts of albums. But the first album I think I actually put my hand in my pocket and bought myself was probably 67, 70, the Beatles. Which was a good deal dearer than 45p. It was £3.40 for several weeks' pocket money. But and in the house there's a lot of albums lying about. But that was my first single, my first album.
What about yourself, Les?
Yeah, I remember my first single very well. It was Mott the Hoople, All the Young Dudes. Because I was quite a young dude at the time, and I probably bought it in exactly the same shop as the guys I've talked about. And I think the same week as that, or maybe a wee bit after, I bought the double live album by Peter Frampton. Frampton Comes Alive,
right? Okay,
which was just a tour de force of Americans, pop rock music. Guitars to the front, and I loved the simplicity of it and the energy of that live performance. And it's an album that I actually occasionally still dig into now on the streaming services, because I think it's just a superb example of what can be done in that genre in a live environment.
Yeah, it's something that, technology, it's moved on today, downloading, streaming. I'm of the generation where when I was younger, you went to the shop and you bought an album, and you would with me it was more cassettes, and then it went on to CDs. But you would flick through them. You could buy an album based on just the album artwork. If the album artwork was cool, that could help sell the album, and then you would take it home, and hopefully it was actually a decent listen as well. And I always remember my dad saying he got his first job in Glasgow, and there was a music shop in Sucky Hall Street, and he said, you would save up, and he says he loved nothing better than going to the shop and he'd buy you the vinyl, the record, and he'd walk home, or he'd go to the bus station. He lived in Cumbernauld, so he'd walk home, and it was the coolest thing ever to have your record under your arm, and people could obviously see the artwork, then you knew what music you were listening to. And it's a shame, because I kind of feel like artwork, it's still really important. It's part of the whole album experience, and I kind of feel like that is getting lost as each year goes on, because people just listen to singles and 30 seconds and they move on. It's a shame.
See, if you look at the entire Genesis oeuvre, you could not imagine a Genesis album without it being on a record. when the artwork is 99% of what you're buying in a lot of cases. You look at it, the cover of Selling by the Pound, Trick of the Tail, Nursery Crime, Foxtrot, it's all really important because Lamb Lies Down, you've got a double gatefold with a story in the middle of it. But one of the things about going to buy a record, we used to buy, obviously, the Woolworths and Johnson, the wee shop along where the Barbers is now. But there was also Listen Records and Tapes on Union Street that you used to go in and you could buy your singles there. But you're right, you bought off the basis of what it looked like in a lot of cases. You said, that looks like a great album. Some of them were crap. Captain Fantastic and the Brown Duck Cowboy, for example, don't buy this album. But I mean, some of them were just fantastic.
I know. There is something nice about having unlimited music to hand, but there's something not nice about losing the whole album feel. Because even you'll know yourself, if you're writing an album, you write 10 songs, you don't just put the 10 songs on it. It's important to start with a certain song, which leads into the next one. Sometimes it's got to be those 10 songs in that particular order. You've got, and you study the artwork and if there's and all that. And I sometimes feel that's lost, but I think that's just the world, unfortunately, that we live in. That's the way it goes. But similar to obviously talking about buying albums and experiencing bands, the other big thing is how important the live experience is. I don't even know now how many gigs I've been to. I've been going to gigs for 30 years and I'll go to a gig next week and I'll still feel the same way I felt when I was 15-year-old. It's such a magical experience. It sounds very dramatic, but going to a live concert, and it could be at King Tut's, it could be 500 people, it could be at the Hydro, 13,000. But you've got problems in your life, you've got things going on. You go to that concert for an hour and a half, you forget about your troubles. Everybody's on the same page, enjoying the same music. It's something that everybody should experience at least once in their life. But for each of you, what was the first professional concert you ever attended and whereabouts was it?
Glasgow Apollo. And Eric Clapton was special. Right. I think it was about 9, because Eric Clapton was who I based all my initial guitar work on. I just worshipped the guy's guitar playing. And I went with my elder brother, and I think I must have been about 14. It was Eric Clapton plus special guest, and there was no they didn't have internet in those days. You didn't know who the special guest was till they turned up.
Yep.
And there's a single chair in the middle of the stage, and on walked BB King. Like amazing. Yeah, it was just fantastic.
I seen something a while ago, and it was when the Who, I think, did the first tour of America. They took this unknown band out as support, and of course people didn't know who they were. Leonard Skinner. You just think it's just crazy. What about yourself, John? What was the first concert you ever attended?
I can't really recollect what the first concert. I can give you what was the most memorable concert of my teenage years. I'll give you the background to this. I left the house to go to this gig. It cost me £1.50, and that's another thing about gigs. You could see the Rolling Stones for £2. Yeah. I left the house and I was dressed in a pair of Oxford bags, a waistband that was about 7 inches with buttons all the way up, huge white trousers. I had a red and black military jacket from the 3rd Lanark Rifle Volunteers. I had a kind of bandana, I had hair, I looked like I was peering out a hedge. And I went down there and I walked down to the station and people laughing and pointing, as you can well imagine. And I got on the train, there's a couple other guys and I knew where they were going because they looked at me. Yep. And I got to the station, other people were off the trains and they looked at me too, and suddenly nobody was laughing at me because we were going somewhere. We walked all the way up Hope Street, right to the top, to the Apollo, and we went and we watched Whitesnake, and they were stunning. It was unbelievably good. And I came out of that gig exactly as you said. I don't care if somebody had said to me, "Oh, by the way, your house is burnt down." I'd go, "All right, okay," and go and get the train. It was just immense.
It's funny you say that, John. I had a podcast yesterday, and it was Doug Aldrich from Whitesnake that was on. Yeah. And he was blathering away. But what about yourself, Les? What was the first concert you ever attended?
I had a very strange introduction to the world of live music. After thinking that the Americana of Peter Frampton on the album that I bought was how all live things went. I thought, it's about time I went and saw some of this live music. Yeah. And I managed to get a ticket, me and my mate, Drew Patrick, guys, who you'll maybe remember from school. We managed to score 2 tickets in 1976 to go and see Black Sabbath at the Glasgow Apollo. Wow. The full original lineup, Ozzy, and it was just about the time of the headlines of him biting the heads off of bats and stuff that. And just like John says, the journey to the gig was almost as memorable as the gig itself. But the sheer wall of sound coming off of that stage, we were in the stalls, right down kind of 10 rows from the front or something. And the physical feeling of that wall of guitar music and the heavy metal sound was just incredible. And it's unforgettable that time. And I've seen, I think, John, I think you and I might have been at that Whitesnake gig together, but, everything from there to, even a local pub band, or if you're playing in a pub band, playing some covers or whatever, that same vibe is there. And I've been fortunate enough, just like you, Ian, to see loads of great bands, and each of them memorable in their own way. But I'll never forget Ozzy standing, he was probably 50 feet away from me, and I'm thinking, that's what rock and roll is, right? I kind of get it now. That was great fun. Happy days.
The live experience it's great when you see lots of different styles, because I seen Iron Maiden last year. I've seen them loads of times, but I've seen them on their last tour, and it's outstanding. I mean, you see them on stage, they sound great, they look like they're having the time of their life. They've got the pyrotechnics, they've got the lights, they've got the backdrops. It looks brilliant. But equally, I can go and see like C6 Steve, and he can be sat on a chair, just an acoustic guitar, a microphone, nothing fancy, nothing else on stage. It's just as good, because he's this charismatic old blues guy that's telling a story. Yeah. Some people have just got it, some people haven't, but everybody should go to a live gig. And as you say, it sounds funny, but you feel the sound. You don't just hear it, you can feel it in your chest. Yeah. And the only sad thing I think John had said there is the ticket prices nowadays are just ridiculous. And I'm thankful I started going to gigs in the 90s, and there's a lot of the bands that I saw, they're still on the go just now. But there's bands that I seen, and the tickets were a tenner at the Barrowlands. Yeah. And if you want to go and see that same band now, you're probably £100 or more to see them. And are they better now than they were when they were on their first tour and they were like 30 years younger? I don't know, but it goes. But
I think I think the live music thing is simply because it's the only way bands make any money these days. When you look at the streaming revenues, I mean, funny enough, talking about Peter Frampton, he brought some sort of lawsuit in America around the fact that his album downloaded about 1 million times and he got 700 quid for it. And I do think that's the way. That's why it's gone that way. Is the only way they can actually generate real revenue is to go live.
You're right, Ray. But the problem is still though. Now that you've got this dynamic pricing thing, the band themselves are getting a fraction. So you're getting someone like Ticketmaster who're making a huge amount of money out of the basis that lots of people want to see this band, and the band are still getting a limited amount of cash. I mean, it seems to me that it's I know I'm going to be off message a wee bit here, but it's exactly the same thing that's happened with the World Cup. Nobody can afford to go. It's too expensive. It's ridiculous. Something that used to belong to everybody, pop music. It was the new music of the people. We can't afford to do it anymore. Young people would have to save up for weeks to be able to get the money to go and see whatever drivel they want to see nowadays.
It's crazy. I had a band on, this unsigned band from London, and they're doing really well. They're getting some really good gigs and making it themselves noticed. And they'd said to me that they'd released a single and it done really well. They'd got their first 1 million streams on Spotify. And he got £400 for it. Yeah. And I'm just like, you write a song that you come up with in your head, and 1 million people have streamed that. and you get £400. I said, if I go and do two gigs in the pub, I've made the same amount of money. You know, that's not fair. Like 1 million streams is a great achievement, but to get nothing for it. I had the White Buffalo. I don't know if you've heard of them. I had them on.
Yes, right.
And they're saying they feel like they're T-shirt salesmen on tour.
Yes, yeah.
It's kind of sad, but I was going to ask, obviously, Ray, you play lead guitar. You'd mentioned Eric Clapton before. What was the reason that you picked up the guitar? Why not the bass or the drums? Was the guitar just available for you, or did you just want to be like Clapton?
Well, you know, no. It was much more basic than that, Ian. It was when Les came to my front door and said, "Do you want to form a band?" I said, "I can't play anything," and he said, "Well, neither can I." And I said, "Well." We talked about it, and I just decided that we'll do the guitar, and I think you said you were going to do drums at first, didn't you, Les?
Yeah, that's right.
And that was it. So I literally begged, borrowed guitars, and just put my head into it.
If I was to ask you, Ray, who's your 3 guitar influences? Who's the 3 for yourself?
Interesting, it has changed over the years.
Yeah.
But it did start with Clapton. Blackmore.
Right.
Brian May. Yeah.
I mean, they're just outstanding, all in different ways, but such unique guitarists.
Yeah. Great.
They're really good. John, what about yourself? Obviously, you're on keyboards. Why the keyboard? Why not the guitar or the bass? Or
I play guitar as well, and I would make a distinction when I say I play guitar. I'm not a guitarist. I play the guitar. Ray's a guitarist. There's a major distinction. I play the keyboards because I would play the piano since age of 5. Having said that, I mean, I love the keyboards. I've got a Mellotron here. I have an actual Mellotron. I'm just letting that out there. But I love my keyboards. They're tremendous. But I mean, in terms of the people of my influence, the people that I think, you know, led me to changing from the idea of turning up as a concert pianist, which by the way never going to happen, would be, I mean, initially Rick Wright, top man, quality player, just beautiful musician, but never actually pushing himself forward. I aspire to be Tony Banks, but I'm not going to get there. He's a virtuoso. He's utterly fantastic.
Yeah.
There are others. John Lord and Rod Argent, I would think, were the people that I take my influences from. But I'm perfectly happy with the keyboards, and I think here it's one of these. I feel that as a keyboard player, I've got more available to me than a lot of other instrumentation because I've got a piano or strings or Mellotron. I don't know if I mentioned that. I've got all these bits and pieces that I can add to it with my Hammond organ, and I also, because I'm not very flamboyant, I can hide behind them. Nobody needs to see me, so I'm quite happy with that.
I like that. The Hammond organ makes me think of Ray Manzarek from The Doors.
Yes, a fine fellow, although he was a Farfisa man, and also he played a rather remarkable mixture. He had a Fender bass piano.
Of course.
It was only an octave, I think an octave and a half of bass. And
left hand bass. And
that's right. He was a great player. You're right. One of the tops.
What about yourself, Les? Because you're obviously bass and vocals. Which one came first for you?
Probably bass, actually. I think the first time when Ray and I played in the very initial band, I managed to end up on drums, and the reason why I didn't pursue that was that the only drum kit we could borrow was one from the school, which didn't have cymbals. Right. So we came up with this classic idea that we would get a music stand. You know, you put your sheet music on, and that we would actually tie a bit of string onto a cymbal, and that would do as a cymbal stand. So we're on the stage in our first ever gig that we played together, and the first song we were going to do was a cover of Slade's "Come On, Feel the Noise," which started in our one with a drum roll and a cymbal crash. And I did the drum roll and the cymbal crash and the whole thing collapsed.
Of course.
So that I think PTSD set in from that day to this about playing the drums. But I think we then found a guy that was a pretty decent drummer. And so I decided, well, if I'm going to stay in the band, I'm going to need to learn something. We didn't have a bass player. And I thought, I can do that. So I bought the cheapest Fender copy bass that you could have. It cost 20 quid. And it had strings that I think had been changed in 1958. And I stuck with it from there. But singing was something that came later, because when we were in the first real kind of more serious band that the guys and I were in, Ecthos, where we played from about 1975 up to about 1979, I would say. There was another chap who was actually fairly briefly in Black Cart, Gordon, who did a lot of the singing, and I did a lot of the harmony vocals, and then it gradually kind of evolved that I would take some of the lead and he would do some of the harmony, and we ended up kind of sharing it. But when the band got back together again, just in 2017, Gordon's voice had gone a bit. He had suffered a bit. I've sung in bands really over my whole life.
Yep.
And so I was still doing it. So I kind of pretty much took over lead vocal from there. And we've now got to the stage that because our songwriting has evolved over time, and we'll talk about what that means in terms of streaming and so on, I'm sure, in a bit. But in order to have a bit of a unique selling point, we have actually now, as well as the layering of the keyboards and the guitar, we've added a lot of harmony vocal to it as well. So that has really, I think, helped me, because you've got to think a bit like a keyboard player, which I know is hard for anybody that's not played keys, and I don't play keys. But to be able to think about what's actually going to work and what's going to enhance the sound of that song through the harmonies, so that you're actually bringing the power of that song home through the lyric, the melody, and the harmony. And I think that's something that we try and work on and spend a lot of time as a band doing when we're releasing songs.
Which one do you think you're stronger at? Bass playing or singing?
Whichever one I'm not doing at that particular time.
Well, I was going to ask you as well, because I always think singing's very different. I play guitar and sing. And, I've got guitars that are 30 years old. And, they've got dents in them, they've got scratches, but you re-string them, you give them a bit of a clean. And they sound just as good as the day you picked them off the shelf in the shop.
Yeah.
Your voice is an instrument.
Yeah.
Your voice will naturally change over time. How do you think your singing voice is now today compared to, for example, 30 years ago?
I think it is a little bit lower, but I can still reach a B when we're doing the harmonies. So we're still got a wee bit of top end on there as well. But I think it's less about, to me, with the music that Black Cat produces, Ian, it's less about the technical aspect than it is about the emotion and the feeling of that particular song. Because we take the song from, sometimes two chords that get joined together, and we decide that it's going to evolve from that. It gives me the chance, because I write most of the lyrics. Initially, I do the kind of first draft of the lyrics, and then the band works together to kind of refine them and make them as best as it can be. So it's a very collaborative effort. Getting the message of that across. If the vocal performance isn't adding to that, then there's no reason for it to be there. You may as well just play an instrumental.
Yeah. Aye. It's a tough one, because if you don't sing, it's hard to sort of get it. But singing's a tricky one. If you play any instrument, you can get lessons. Other musicians can show you tricks, hints and tips, all that sort of stuff. Nowadays you just go onto YouTube, you've got a million lessons on how to play whatever song you want to play. But when it comes to vocals, at least 50% of it's confidence, and someone can't teach you confidence. There's a lot of people, who's most? We need a singer. Who's most confident to stand in front of the microphone? And that's how a lot of singers actually start. And it takes a while to find your own voice because you're influenced by your heroes, and then over time, you hopefully you find your own voice. You realise what you're capable of doing, what your parameters are, and if you can figure that out, you're usually ready to start doing your own tunes and sounding quite good. But the band itself, it started in the 70s.
Yep.
And it went through to the 80s. Why did the band initially end? Was it just, did life just get in the way?
Yeah, I mean,
we
all went to, we went to different universities, and then when we left there, we all got different jobs all over the country. I moved south. Les, what we don't want to tell Leslie's story for him, but Les ended up in the Far East at some point.
Yep.
And John went into, I believe, the ministry and then teaching. So round about the Johnston area. So we've all had completely different career paths. Yeah.
Did you guys remain in touch throughout the years?
Absolutely.
No.
No.
It was how it happened, Ian, is we had kind of, some of us had connected very vaguely through Facebook. And it was John who one day posted a thing about the keyboards that he used to have back in the early days of the band.
Yeah.
The Korg MS-10, which was one of the early synthesizers.
Yeah.
And John had one. John was an early adopter of the synth. And he's saying, I bought this for 150 quid, and now as vintage, they're selling for like $5,000. And I think I sold it to a guy for a box of buttons. And I think I saw that and said, I look back to the first real bass that I got, which was a Fender Music Master bass. And these now go for really strong money. I think I paid 100 quid for it. And Ray chipped in as well about some of the stuff that he had bought over the years as well. And somebody came up with the idea and said, why don't we get together for a jam session, guys? Yeah. And it was directly as a result of John posting about the value of those old keys, and everything since then sprung from that message.
It's funny, I kind of done something similar. Life gets in the way, and I've got friends that I played in bands with that are still playing music, and then others probably haven't touched an instrument in 30 years or that. And there was a few of us got together. This is maybe 10 years ago now. Everybody's set up. Some people are more confident than others. And then it was like, right, what songs do we actually remember? And you're trying to remember cover songs just let's just play something. And I don't even know if we got through one song start to finish, because it got to a point where everybody forgets what the song goes like and that. But it's great fun though as well. You just forget how much fun it is. If you put all the other stuff aside, it's great fun just making a noise with your pals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We hadn't seen each other for probably 30 odd years, John, right? And we had arranged the date for us to do this first initial jam session in a wee studio in Glasgow that's no longer there. And John messaged me to say, I've got a bit of car trouble, any chance you could pick me up on that morning? So I said, sure, no problem, I'll come round and get you. Yep. So I swung round past John's house. I hadn't seen this guy for 30 odd years. He jumped in the car. We carried on the same conversation as we had finished off with 35 years ago. It was as if nothing had changed. The same bullshit humour, the same nonsensical jabbing at each other. It was like a time machine.
It was astounding.
It was exactly the same. We bumped into Ray later on that day. It was tremendous.
It's funny though, because you think the band started in the 70s, and you all met when you were at school, and it probably feels like a lifetime ago, a long time ago. But then in other ways, it's like no time has passed at all. You just pick up where you left off.
Absolutely.
I think if you have that kind of, when we started, Les made a really good point when he said we had to have some sort of unique selling point at school. We weren't attractive, which therefore girls were not interested in us. We were not good at football or any other sport at all. I played rugby at Johnson High School for a term, and they made me play a hooker. I'm about 3 foot tall. It was the last position I should have been in. I had my face kicked in routinely. So sport was no use to us. Music was there. But that bond, the bond of music, because there was nobody else in Johnson High playing music at that time, it was us. And that binds you together. It's quite astonishing. So that, I mean, as you say, 30 years passes, but it's a blink of an eye. It really was.
The bond of music and trying to get a female to look at you, I suppose it's those two things. Well, I always remember I got my first guitar, and my uncle had played in bands when he was younger, so I'd asked for a guitar when I was like, I don't know, 10 or 11. And my parents didn't know anything about instruments, so they'd said to my uncle, would you be able to, this is how much we're looking to spend, could you go and get something that's half decent? And I always remember him saying to me, this is the guitar plectrums, put them in your pocket next to your change, because if you're at the bar and you're paying for something, you take it out, and if there's a lassie nearby, oh, what's that? Play the guitar, and it's a great pick-up line. But,
does it still work, Ray? When you do that, does it still work?
That's why I've got a badge that says I've got a Mellotron on it.
You should still take the plectrum with you and pretend you play the guitar.
I've
been pretending to play the bass for 35 years. I don't know what you're talking about.
But I was going to ask you, kind of touched on it a little bit there. I was going to ask, what is the band's songwriting process? So is there a main songwriter? Does somebody come in with the skeleton of a song from which everybody adds their parts to make it better? What is the band's preferred songwriting process?
Hey, it's Johnny from Alcotomic, and you're watching Slowhands Rock Talk Show, talking all things music.
Just a very quick message to say thank you for watching. It really is appreciated. If you could hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and remember to hit the notification bell. That way you won't miss any future episodes that come out. Now back to the video.
Well, I think that's developed over the last few years. I mean, we all had, if you want, a bank of ideas that we'd had built up over the years. So that when we first got together, we all had ideas that were quite mature, but we absolutely collaborated, as I was talking about earlier, collaborated around the melody, the chord sequences, the structure, everything to start with. And so what tends to happen now is that because we've got we've used that process for a while, one of us will come up with an idea, and well, funny enough, we're working on one or two right now. Yeah. Where I came up with an idea, I've spent it amongst the guys, and they're going to be working on it. Les has come up with an idea, and we're all going to take that away and work on it. So it's really, there's a germ of an idea, but it doesn't really matter where it comes from. And John's got some ideas that he's brought to us, and everyone has created songs from everyone in the band. So there's no main songwriter, it's just whoever comes up with the idea.
It's nice that you say that, because it sounds like the three of you are sensible enough that you can put ego aside, and whoever's got the best idea, let's work on it. Let's see if we can turn this into something. Because the amount of bands I've seen that fall apart, and it's because of ego. People they write something, they don't want other people messing with it. They don't like it when someone says, maybe this idea isn't working for this moment in time, or that. It's nice when you see a band that they understand it. Who's got what ideas have we got, and you find the best idea. It doesn't matter who came up with it. Let's just work on the best idea, and then from there, let's see if we can get a song out of this and make a great song. What about when it comes to the lyrics? Is it mostly yourself, Les?
Well, again, it's exactly the same process, really, Ian. I will tend to have, because I like anybody that writes lyrics, I've got a book that I'll jot down ideas on. It will be a line, or it will be a verse, or it will be even just something that says, make it sound like X, Y, Z, or put this emotion into it, or remember this thing, or this historical thing that was interesting. And I will tend to, exactly as Ray says, if we've got, take an example, a chord sequence, and a good example of that is a song that we wrote, which is called Rain from Cloudless Skies.
Yeah.
Ray had a single line guitar lick, which he sent round, and this is where technology really helps us, because we do all live a bit of a distance apart from each other. So Ray will email this out and say, I've got this idea, what do we think of it? And John and I, because we live closer to each other, will sometimes take that in for a morning into the Barclay 2 studios in Glasgow. Good friends, guys, we shout out. And we will work away at it, change it, develop it, and I will come up with, here's what lyric might fit into the feeling of that, like we were talking about earlier. Yeah. But that lyric itself is not something that anybody is going to die in a ditch over. So if it gets changed round 100 times before we're finished, that's good, because it means that we're all standing behind it, and it means that it's not me just saying, well, I've done this lyric and therefore that's it, finished, or anybody saying, well, I want to make that change and it doesn't make the cut. We will often change, go back, revert, develop, sometimes abandon things. And one of the things that actually John and I are together this coming Tuesday, working on a piece that John actually put together initially in 2022, which we recorded the year after 2023. And it's just never been at the front of the queue. And now it is. So now we can focus on that. And the lyric of that is going to evolve over time, as is the melody, as are the harmonies, as is the arrangement. So, it took us 35 years to produce our first album. And, so anytime we're able to put a song out, it feels like a minor triumph. And we released 8 songs in 2025 and one so far in 2026. And each of them is important and special to us in its own way. And we don't have one particular seam of lyrical theme. Everything is just that little bit different.
Well, I was going to ask as well, if I was to take the lyrics separate from the music, would I know what you're singing about? Would it be obvious what the story of the lyrics is? Or do you like to be a little bit more vague, that if 10 people listen to the song or read the lyrics, 10 people might take 10 different things away from it?
I think one of the great strengths of Les's lyric writing style is that there is always a strong narrative feel to it. Right. Les has very brilliantly not gone down the line that might have been, you could have gone from a prog rock background of vague hippie style, slightly philosophical lyrics. The songs say a particular thing, they address a particular idea, and that's very clear. Where, if there's any point at which the lyric doesn't necessarily have clarity, that's where the collaborative bit comes in, and we tend to get together and say, well, could we change this? There's been times, particularly thinking of a song called Starlight, which is quite a recent one, where there was one particular line that we went over and over and over trying to work out how to make it different from the previous line, because it kind of didn't seem to go in it, and then we realised, of course, it does go. So if you repeat it, it does exactly what it should be doing. And so anybody listening to the song is going to hear and feel, I think, what we want to tell them. I don't suggest that our song is prescriptive, but I think it's a really good strength of Les's lyrics writing style, that the song says what we want it to say, what the band wants it to say, not just one member.
I mean, the good thing is, there is no right or wrong answer, but I always find lyrics fascinating. I really like The Doors. Jim Morrison, big lyricist. Some of their songs, it's very obvious what he's singing about. There's other songs, he maybe had a little bit of help with alcohol and drugs to get to the final point. But, someone would ask him, what does this song mean? And he didn't like to tell them, because he liked them to make up their own mind, right? You've got somebody,
experience.
You've got somebody like Noel Gallagher, who will say, I have got absolutely no idea what this song is about, but I don't need to know what it's about, because when 50,000 people sing it back to me, it means something to them. But then you've also got, I seen an interview not too long ago, and it was with Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam, and their first album, one of their big songs was Alive, a song called Alive, and the chorus is I'm still alive. And he said that the way he sang that lyric back in the 90s, it was like I'm still alive as a curse. But he says over the 30 years, he sings the same lyrics now, but the meaning of them has changed, so it's now a celebration. You know, lyrics are fascinating, and it's different for every single band, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's just fascinating how it works, and I like the fact that you guys, again, Les, you may be coming up with the initial idea, but let's hear everybody's ideas. Let's make this as good as possible. If somebody could come up with a better line, go for it. It's a good way to be.
Yeah. It's all about the song, right?
Of course.
That's a line that Ray uses all the time, and that I think is something that's great. Whenever we've got an idea, Ray will always take it back. What's it doing for the song? And that has worked for us. I think that's a fair point, Ray, right?
But that sounds really simple. But see the amount of bands that it's not like that. The amount of bands where the members, they're all fighting for the spotlight. They want people to hear them, look at them. And I'm like, and then you see the bands where it's like, they don't care. It's like, what's best for the song? You know?
Yeah.
Some people, I find it hard that some musicians don't get it. You know, I'm a guitarist at heart, you know, and I do like, there's a time and a place for your Eddie Van Halen guitar shredding, but less is more sometimes. It's just a one-note guitar bend. It might be all that's required to make the song sound better. And it's nice when bands understand that. They understand dynamics in the song, what makes the song better. It's nice that you guys have got that. But I was going to ask as well, what's the band's preferred way to record? Do you have a preferred way on how to record songs?
So we tend to do it with, certainly Les and I have got our own home studios.
Yeah.
So we record there. When we involve John, we tend to bring John into the studio with us.
Yeah.
To final, bring John in while we're getting to the more final stages of the song. That doesn't mean John hasn't got it to work on in between times at home, but he doesn't have his own studio, so we kind of work that way. But we've had songs back and forward. I don't know how many times saying, "What do you think of that version of the guitar part and that?" Or Les says, "What do you think of the melody at this part?" And it just goes back and forth. But that's a slower way of doing it. But we do get to where we need to be, but it's interesting. Our Christmas song was that a Christmas song? We all just got in the studio one day and did it effectively.
Yeah.
And I think there's some value in that, and it's certainly worth exploring going forward. That perhaps that might get things moving quicker.
Was that as in, like, did you record that live, or was it overdubs?
There was overdubs.
It was separate parts. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's brilliant. I'm probably got a similar setup to you guys. I've got a wee sort of home studio, and you think back to the olden days. I'm saying the olden days, but even you couldn't have a home studio when I was younger. I mean, you would have had to have had a lot of money to have a home studio. And for relatively not a lot of money now, you can have a very professional setup in your spare room. And it's amazing because, I kind of think, God, if I had this set up when I was a teenager, you probably would never have seen me. But I remember buying my first ever Tascam 4-track.
Yeah,
and I thought it was the most amazing thing ever, because prior to that, it was a tape recorder with record and play that you'd press at the same time. And then I've got this 4-track, and I'm thinking, hold on, I can record stuff onto track 1, something different onto track 2, something different onto track 3. I can then bounce it all to the other track and then spare it. And it made you very, very creative. And you think back to those bands from the 60s and the 70s especially, the recording equipment was so unbelievably primitive compared to nowadays. But I think there's a charm about that. I think that's what made some of those bands so great, because it made them be as as unique as they possibly could be in the studio.
Talk about having to keep it simple. Because if you try to do anything too complicated, you're going to lose it. And when John, I think you were going to talk about the early days recording.
I suppose we're going to talk about Alison Street. We're going to say that the occasion we went into this studio. And I seem to remember the slightly bizarre thing about it was it costs more than it does to spend 2 days in Barclay 2 now for a couple of days in Alison Street. It was quite ridiculous. And it was somebody's front room or a flat, and there was blankets pinned to the wall and egg boxes pinned to the ceiling and all that kind of stuff. And in order to get the depth of sound and to get things, the vocalists, so I can't remember who was singing vocals at the time, I think it was probably Gordon then, to record the line and then record it again exactly the same way to give it a thickness. And the same thing was asked of the guitar. You play the guitar and play exactly the same thing to give it this depth of sound. Nowadays, you're doing that. I mean, I don't have a recording studio. I've got a cassette recorder, but I also have a laptop. I could quite easily do all that sort of stuff on what I've got sitting here. I mean, it's 1,000 times more simple. The vicissitudes of trying to record it in 1976 it was monumental. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously started playing in bands in the 90s, and even back then, I mean, you had to pay for studio time. Mm. And it was expensive. I mean, you're all working part-time jobs, just putting your money together to make a 4 or 5 song demo, and it's on a cassette tape. And nowadays it is amazing. It is one of the things that's really cool about technology nowadays, that you can have a relative. You spend maybe 500 quid, and you've got like a professional setup, and it's pretty cool to have. But here's a question, and it might be different for each of you, but obviously, you write songs, you record songs, and then separate to that, there's obviously the live performances, the gigging part of it as well. Obviously, money aside, if it was the same rewards for each of them, see if you had to pick one, writing and recording only, or performing live only, which one do you think you would pick?
So me, live. I mean, I've been playing live music all my life. Since the age of 14, and I still do. So it's me. It's me. Yeah. What
about yourself, John?
I love playing live. I think it's a great thing. I would have to say though, I would have to, there's a tension between it. Les and I were for a year members in a pub band, and we played covers. And it was a thoroughly excellent experience. We enjoyed it. I enjoyed the kind of freedom of going, what are we doing at the weekend, lads? We're going to do Keep On Running. Okay, how does it go? It goes like this. Right, okay, that's in the set. When you played it once, and that was rehearsal. Boom, we're now going to sing it and go out there. And I loved that. It was fantastic and wonderful. You can't really replicate the experience of standing up in front of a group of people who are appreciating what you're doing, and that sense of achievement that comes from it. But by the same token, the way we work in the recording and the pruning and then the honing and getting things down, that's a very rewarding experience. I mean, it's difficult to say which I would prefer. I'm going to sit on the fence.
Yeah. It's funny it's funny you say that, John. I started gigging in the pubs maybe just over 15 years ago, and I was playing lead guitar and doing backing vocals. There was another guy doing rhythm guitar and singing at the time, and we worked in the same office, and it would be like the gig would be Thursday night, and it would be like Tuesday, and he would message me on the work messenger thing, what do you think about this song? And I'd be like, that's fine, what's the chords? And what frets your capo on? That's fine, let's go for it. We never practiced once, and some songs worked, some didn't, some needed a bit of practice, but it's one of the things when you're in the pub, you can get away with a lot with confidence as well.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Les?
Well, it's interesting, it's almost like you've panned the whole sound from right to left, because for me, I love playing live, and I've always done so. I've been fortunate enough to play live loads of times and in some very weird places, as wide and wonderful as Vietnam and India, as well as some weird places in Scotland as well. But to me, the beauty of writing and recording something that is yours, that you own, is something that's very special. And I think it is part of the issue that we're currently facing as a band, as Black Cart, which is we've gone through a couple of different lineups. There's been people that have come and gone, and that's great and that's healthy because the core of it is the three of us and sort of always has been. But I think there is something about a band that only plays its own original music that is best suited almost to writing and recording and releasing that way, because the market for coming and hearing an originals band, unless you've got maybe more of a momentum than we've been able to put together so far, although we're still optimistic, is a bit different. But to me, the quality of the product that we put together is something that we all focus on, so that regardless of whether it's something that you could play live or not, the live piece almost becomes secondary. Because if I take an example, one of our best streamed songs, Salem's Dusk, has at last count 28 different vocal stems on it. So how you're going to replicate that live, I don't know, unless you're going to put a chamber choir on there, you know. So it's just different.
Get an effect for it now.
Maybe just a stomp box and you're away. But I just think there is something special about what we do, and that's a legacy as well. That's going to be something that, you know, as older guys, you do begin to think about, and that's something that's going to be there beyond us, and that's kind of magical.
Yeah. I was going to ask as well, is there a difference playing with the band now compared to all them years ago, or does it still feel the same?
Ooh.
That's a tricky one. There's no
apart from all the aches and pains of getting older.
Aye, everything's heavier than it used to be, Ian. Things used to be lighter than they are now. And young folk were far more polite back in my day. But no, in terms of playing with a band now, I think there's a greater attention to detail. There's a sensation of saying that when we started, it was kind of like the phrase, "it's close enough for rock and roll," could have been our mantra. It's good enough. It'll do. Nobody needs to know anymore. It'll be fine and dandy. I think now we want the product, as Les has said. I mean, it is a legacy in a lot of ways. We want the product to be the very best it possibly can be. And part of that process, I mean, when you stand in your studio stage or whatever, when you're playing something and you know that you've made the best possible effort to get it as good as you possibly can, that's a real sensation. You just feel this is fantastic. There have been bits. My son, who is in his 30s, bizarrely, who doesn't really listen to any of our music at all, has fallen in love with the tune Starlight. And thinks, sorry to kind of bum you up here, Ray, but he thinks you are now an axe hero that he would like to meet and tells people he knows. That guitar solo he thinks is fabulous, which totally, in fact, masks my brilliant Hammond work, but I don't mind that. The point about it is we produce things which are perfect, as close as perfect as we can get.
Yeah.
And that is brilliant.
It sounds like maybe you appreciate it more now that you're a wee bit older. You know, back when you're younger, it's almost like you just do it because that's what you're doing. But to be able to come back to it all these years later, it's almost like you appreciate it a wee bit more.
Yeah, one of the things for me is that, exactly as John says, I mean, it's disappointing for me to be in such agreement with our keyboard player. It's quite an unusual thing to happen. Getting it right and doing the best we can is something that we demand quite a lot of each other, right? You know, when we're in the studio, if there's something that's not right, we're going to say, and nobody's going to take it personally. We're going to go back and deal with it best way we can. And the other thing for me that I think adds a lot of value is that we've always got professional production work done once we've done our part of it. once it's got to as far as we can get it to, we will then send that end product out to a professional producer. So Jack, who's Ray's contact, has done a number of our more recent ones. Brian McNeil, who is the keyboard player from China Crisis, has done most of our production work over the years. And just having that third party come and listen is the first chance you get for somebody different to hear what you're doing and say, yeah, that works. And they're prepared to put their name to it as well. And there's a lot of value in that.
Funny that you say that, Les, because I think I was in the exact same situation. See the amount of songs I've written across the years, and you try to make them as best as you possibly can make them. But I've got a home studio set up, recording's fine. It got to a point where I was like, I know how to record, but I am not a mixer. You know, I'm going to, okay, you pay a bit of money, but I'm going to trust someone else's with a fresh pair of ears to listen to this. And you know what? The recordings really are night and day. Like all my recordings, the songs themselves, good songs, was never happy with how it sounded. Then you pass it off to somebody else with a fresh pair of ears, and you trust them, and it is night and day when you listen to the recordings. So it's worthwhile. It's good that you realise that as well. Do your best part in the studio, getting it recorded, but then hand it off and let somebody that knows what they're doing make as best as possible afterwards.
Yeah, it's a completely...
Yeah, it makes it an expense. On you go, Ray, sorry.
That's right. So it's a completely different skill, to mix and to produce, pull the sound out instead of it all just being together. Just, bring the value of the instrumentation, the vocal, the lyrics all out.
Yeah, I mean, when I listen to my old recordings, I'm first and foremost like a guitarist. What do you think was highest in the mix? Not on purpose, but you need someone that's neutral to go and listen and actually level it out a little bit.
It's interesting because it does make it an expensive hobby, right? Because you're paying decent money to somebody to actually do that. But this goes back to the state of the industry that we almost kind of started the conversation with, Ian, which is I think that for a lot of people, their attention span for music is much less than it maybe was in the past because there is so much product out there. There's millions and millions of new songs released every month. So how you get a hearing for that, who knows? But to me, if you look at the way that artists are treated by the major streaming platforms, it's absolutely criminal. The huge majority of people who release music make zero money from Spotify. We're lucky that we make some money from Spotify, but we've had 400,000 streams on Spotify. So, with the money that has generated, it's not even enough to cover the production costs of the first album. Never mind the dozens of stuff that we've done since then. So at a level, we're fortunate because we've worked in our careers and done okay, that we're able to do that. But how a young person now starting out is able to do it and able to make anything approaching reasonable money out of making music is beyond me, unless they've got some kind of following, unless they've got the social media smarts that we don't have, unless they've got a deal where they're getting promoted, and that makes it tough. But just because it's tough doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, because it's something that you're creating.
First and foremost, to just create a song out of your mind and to have a great recording of it, if that's all you get from it, I'm happy with that. If other people then like it, brilliant. That's even better. But there's something nice. I'm in the middle of recording an album just now, 11 songs, my own songs. Now I'm trying to make it as good as possible. I will send, once I finish recording, I will send it off for someone else to mix and master it. Now, if lots of people love it, once I then get it back and I put it out to the public, that's great. But just for me alone, see, to have an album that's something I created in my head, and I can, long once I'm gone, there's still this music just sitting about. If somebody else enjoys it, brilliant. But I think if you love the music first and foremost, then anything else is just a bonus.
Can I say, just apropos the collaborative process that we were talking about earlier in relation to that sort of thing, about the creating the best possible thing you have. One of the great strengths of the band is that as Les has pointed out, and Ray also, that we don't, it's always in every email, there are no ditches. No one is going to say, damn it, it'll be an E flat or I'll die. We're totally happy to say that. Ray has got a very diplomatic way of telling you that something's crap. He's really good at it. I'm not really sure that's working terribly well, and you're going, right, I know what he means. But at no point is MD getting their high horse, take the strunts and, storm out. And that has led to what I think is, I'm proud of what we do. I get very, very angry when I have no idea who Bad Bunny is or where the name of God he came from. I've never heard of Olivia Dean until she won an award for being a yowling harpy. I know nothing at all about these people, but they seem to turn up with pedestrian, kind of run-of-the-mill bits of music and get to be famous. And I resent the fact that ours, I think, is streets ahead of it. But I'm also immensely proud of the fact that ours is as good as we can possibly make it, and I love the collaborative process.
It's a weird one. Like, you look at the music business nowadays, it depends, I think, maybe what part of the music business you're looking at. If it's the commercial pop side, which has probably got the most money, it's whoever it is that's singing at that moment in time is irrelevant. It's just whoever the nice looking person is that fits that image at that moment in time.
For the years.
But and then 4 years' time, they'll be too old and they'll replace them with someone that's the exact same. So somebody somewhere is making a lot of money from it. But at the same time, there's still great music. There's great bands out there. You just need to go and look for them. And sadly, the only issue is, there's a lot of bands out there that should be making money, and I'm not saying they should be millionaires, but they should be making enough money that they make it worthwhile for themselves. And sadly, that's not the case. I don't know if that'll change. I wish that it would change, but I don't know how the music industry is going these days. It just seems strange. And I was speaking with someone about how's festivals going to go. Could you think, like, I like my rock music. All the big rock bands, Metallica, Iron Maiden, Guns N' Roses. In 20 years' time, if not sooner, all these bands are gone.
Yeah.
Bands that can pull in 60,000 people, that won't exist anymore. And there's lots of great bands that can pull in 3,000 people. But who's going to headline a festival? It'll be interesting in the next 10 years to see what happens to festivals. I know, for example, the Download Festival, I know that the organisers of that are panicking because they don't know what's going to happen. But at the same time, the nice thing is that maybe it'll shine a light on some bands that maybe you wouldn't have seen before, because they're going to have to change the format.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you
Let's hope so.
I'm trying to think who it was, but it was, the guy that does the guy originated in Pointless, Richard
Osman.
Richard Osman.
He was being interviewed, and he said, name me a band that had a top 10 hit in the UK in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And the answer was, there wasn't any.
No.
And and bands have gone, and I think it's down to the music industry. So it costs a lot less money to promote a young person for a year or two who are instantly forgettable than pay and manage a band of people like you used to have, like the Guns N' Roses of the world, where they're constantly having to pay up for hotel bills, or constantly having to pay up for trying to manage bad behaviour, or not, maybe not bad behaviour, but the old style way the bands used to sell themselves through their behaviour, and it's easier, and it costs much less for them to promote them because there's only one person. They just need somebody to work on their social media. I think that's a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
But also I think that's driven from the fact that the record companies, the record companies get virtually all the money from Spotify. You know, the top four sold out to Spotify and Apple and all these people. The PRS sold out to Spotify. So that's what's wrong with the industry. And it just means they can claw in more money. That's my personal view.
I mean, the nice thing is that there's a lot of businessmen running things now, making a lot of money. But I was speaking with Keith Morrison, who runs We Studio up in Stornoway. It's just won the best recording studio in Scotland award for the second year in a row. And he obviously records a lot of the trad music that's very, very big in Scotland just now. And it was nice because I was speaking to him about like one of the big bands is Pete and Diesel. I was speaking to him about them, and his first love is music. He loves hearing, he loves meeting bands, he loves hearing about the band, he loves trying to help the bands to promote them, and he obviously wants to help them record. He wants to help them get their music out there. I know with, for example, Pete and Diesel, he runs We Studio, the recording studio. There's the We Studio record label, and he also goes on tour with some of the bands as the sound engineer as well. He's got a whole package that's running there, but he didn't give me facts or figures, but what he'd said to me was, there was bands looking to get signed, and what record labels were wanting from them was disgusting, the percentage split. So he'd said to them, you know what? I want to help you get your music out there. I want to help you record it. I want to help you get it out there. I'm going to start We Studio records that bands can get signed to, and we'll make up our own little deal that works for the band and it works for me, and it makes it worthwhile for all parties involved. Imagine if everybody was like that, how better the music industry would be. But we've obviously went quite on a sad note here. So last year, lots of singles coming out. You've released one single this year. What is the plans for the band for 2026?
I think there's a number of plans. First of all, I think we have missed a wee bit of a trick by not packaging a second album, because we have had quite a lot of interest in the songs that we produced in 2025. So I think we'll do a bit of pulling those together. But we've got so many ideas for new material that are at the stage now that we need some time together. So that process is really just starting. And I think we'll certainly be releasing a good number of new songs over the course of the rest of this year. Getting together is always a challenge. Just time and people's lives is always difficult to do. But we manage it. We use the technology, and we are, I think, releasing better and better quality material. More and more of our time is spent on making these songs the best that they possibly can be. And hopefully Blackheart is going to go from strength to strength this year.
Oh, fingers crossed. But before we finish up, we've been quite technical for all the musicians that are watching, that want to know about songwriting, recording and all that sort of stuff. So what I like to do is ask some fun questions at the end. I'll ask the questions, you tell me what pops into your head, okay? So, imagine you've got a time machine. Imagine you could go back in time anywhere in the world. What is the one concert that you wish you could have attended?
I like Harvey at the Apollo.
Okay.
Deep Purple at the Budokan.
Ray?
Queen Anywhere with Freddie.
Yeah, that's fine.
Wembley. Yeah.
We spoke about this earlier. It's becoming a bit of a lost art, but it's still important. For each of you, do you have a favourite album cover?
Yeah, Led Zeppelin 3.
Right.
Which has got all the kind of bits that move around and the wheel and stuff, and it's very psychedelic. and I still don't know what was going through their minds when they did it, but whatever it was magic.
Selling England by the pound.
Yep. Ray?
$1 million Babies.
Oh, nice one.
If you could play another musical instrument, what is the musical instrument that you wish that you could play?
Guitar. All keyboard players want to be guitarists.
And all guitarists want to be drummers.
Thought every musician wants to be a drummer. So we can keep in time. No, for me, I'd love to be able to play the drums, yeah.
Les?
I think before my fellow bandmates jump in and say that my preferred thing is I'd love to be able to play bass guitar, I would say that I would love to play the bagpipes. I think it would just be awesome.
That's fine. Next question. We've been very nice so far, so the next question is going to paint somebody in a bad light. But the blame is fully on the band, not myself. So, imagine you've got a dead body in the back of your car. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. You need help disposing of that body, no questions asked. Which member of the band are you calling for help and why? We'll start with Ray.
Les. Because he's taller and he won't leave any traces of any hair.
That sounds like a pretty good reason. What about yourself, John?
I'm going to have to say Les again. He's got an electric car, so it'll be quiet to get away with. And as an old insurance man, I suspect he'll even be able to make a claim and we'll make money out of it.
Les, you've been painted in a bad light here, but which member are you picking?
I'm picking me because none of these other buggers would ever give anybody else the time of day.
We're not dirty in our hands.
Maybe it'd be at 4 o'clock in the morning, Ray and John wouldn't answer their phone.
No, not a chance.
No. John would be drunk and Ray would be gigging.
As you know, thousands and thousands of great songs written and recorded over the years by different artists. What's the one song that you wish you could have sat in the recording studio to witness the band record the song?
For me, without any shadow of a doubt, it would be God Only Knows by the Beach Boys.
Right. Okay. What about yourself?
First or fifth, Genesis.
Okay. Ray?
Highway Star by Deep Purple.
There we go. That's fine. And last question. I know the answer can change daily, but for today, for each of you, who is your Mount Rushmore when it comes to bands? Who's the 4 bands for yourself that are your favourite? Whether it be the one that influenced you, just your current favourite band. Who's the 4 bands for yourself?
Pink Floyd, Genesis, Deep Purple, and Alec Harvey.
Sounds good. Ray?
Queen, Deep Purple, Pink Floyd, and Genesis.
And Les?
Okay, I'm going Genesis, Yes, Deep Purple, and Whitesnake.
Cool, that's fine. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on, answering my questions. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. I do wish you all the continued success, as I do with all the bands that come on. I encourage people, social media, give yourselves a follow. You'll find out from there gigs that are coming up, merchandise, songs coming out. Stream the songs, download them. If there's hard copies, buy them, buy a T-shirt, whatever it is that's on the go. But I do encourage people, go along to the gigs, because when there's gigs coming up, that it really helps the bands. And but I wish you all the continued success. I look forward to seeing the new music that's coming out. And next time you're performing in Glasgow, if you've got anything coming up, give me a shout, because I'll come along, cheer you on.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. Thank you.